all make this switching seat thing look easy. Thank you. So a couple of announcements coming up. Extra credit movie, the final extra credit movie coming up on April 12th on Wednesday, 7 o'clock. As usual, I'll send this out in a Canvas announcement too, so you got the details. This is one of my favorite movies that we show because it brings together so many of the pieces that we've been talking about community and about change and about possibilities, but also about what's really practical, about what's new research is going on that's helping to inform the choices that we make, things that we just didn't know before and how we came to be, where we're headed. So it brings together a lot of that in this extra credit movie, and I appreciate that. So if the conversation signups are happening again today, the clipboards are going around. And so if you're interested in signing up to have a conversation about being a TA, conversations are two ways. That means that you get to ask us questions and we'll ask you questions. And so that's how it comes to be the group of people that train to be TAs for this class. You get 3 credits for training, and then you get 4 credits for being a TA. And all of those credits go to the Sustainability Leadership minor, and so as well as the BiSci credits, so 10 credits already toward that minor. So only a couple more classes to add, a couple of pretty cool classes and opportunities for you. So if you don't get a clipboard, I know they didn't make it all the way around the other day, so if you don't get a clipboard, they will be in the back, so you can check in with Autumn or another TA that will be back there and find that at the end of class too. So if they don't come to you, you can search them out. Or you can just send me an email. And this is where we are. Welcome to part 3. How are we going to respond? What are we going to do about what we know now? About what we feel, about what we're taking in. Right? So making sure that we're reflecting on where we have been. We've talked about Earth as home. How are those deeper connections that we may or may not know and may know more now? Then the second part, assessing the health of home. What's happening on this planet? What's happening locally? What's happening in your own backyards at home? So finding out more. And then this part 3, how are we going to respond? How are we going to bring change? How are we going to heal ourselves and those relationships? We have an impact every moment of every day, and we can make those in so many different ways. What's that impact going to look like? We all do need to consume, and we all do need to relate to other people. We all do need to think about or feel what's going on in our own bodies and heads and hearts. So we have these choices. We have a power of choice in every moment of every day. What is the impact going to be? How are we going to bring all of those things together to make the lives that we're going to make for ourselves and for our communities, for our world? So we have a power of choice. You might feel this. I mentioned this a couple of classes back, the idea of learned helplessness. We mentioned it in the class with Emily, particularly, thinking about what are the emotions that come up around what's happening. And so when people feel helpless, they perceive that no matter how hard they try, or there's nothing that they can do to make change that will get them out of a bad situation. And so some of you mentioned feeling this, except that what's going to happen, you could get stuck, right? I could get stuck in this place of helplessness, but it is learned, right? It's something that we've taken on, and as we know, we can unlearn things, right? We can know. So we've talked about this, do the small things that I do really make a difference? Or is it that big corporations need to change? Is it that we can never make those changes that need to happen? But what I've chosen to do is that the things that I do matter to me, they matter to my household, and they matter to the planet on whatever scale that is. And so I'm going to choose to do anything I can to help. I'm going to be mindful of the choices I make. I'm going to choose to act, because what's the other alternative? Is giving up, right? Is giving in. And that's not where I want to be. That's not how I am going to choose. But that's how I've chosen. You get the opportunity to do that in your way as well. So here in part 3, we're going to think a lot. Like, choice is a huge theme of this class. So we're going to think about our ecological footprint. We're going to think about how we make choices that make a difference in a lot of different ways and levels and schemes and places. And where we're going to start, you've already heard about shelter. Joel did the shelter class, which typically happens after this one. So you've already gotten a taste of this, right? Thinking about how the houses that we choose, the clothes that we choose, the shelter, whatever that means, how that makes a difference. Shelter is about 1/3 of our ecological footprint, as is food. Food is about 1/3 of our ecological footprint. So thinking back to the birth and death class, this slide was there. Earth, water, fire, air, and space combine to make this food. We take the lives and labor of numberless beings that we may eat. May we be nourished, that we may nourish life. May we be nourished, that we may nourish life. So, what has nourishment looked like for you? What has nourishment looked like for you? So for me, nourishment has meant a lot of different things over time, right? The things that go into the food choices that I make. So we each, all of us, have a food story, right? How did we choose the foods? So obviously growing up in a household with my mom and dad, my mom did the food shopping and the cooking, and so my mom chose a lot of the foods that I ate, so that makes a difference. And then my dad grew up, he's Swedish, and so we have that kind of Swedish, but that really only shows up around the holidays, you know, the good old Swedish meatballs or the pickled herring. But some of you may come from a family culture that shows up even more in your food choices. Right? Might be on a daily basis that you're eating something of your culture. Right now, my current family situation, I have 3 sons, you know, and they all like different things. My oldest will eat all kinds of, you know, the foods that I make, and the 8-year-old is like, no, that looks weird. And so the foods that I choose to bring to my family are based on things that maybe I can get all of them to eat. That would be most convenient, least wasteful. So family plays a big part, or community, where you're living now, you know, in your frat house, what is the food that's being provided for you? I helped my dad in the garden as a kid, so particularly garden parsnips. I love parsnips because I helped my dad grow parsnips. So that plays in my story. My great-grandma was known for her baking, and that's something that I love doing, is baking. So all of these different pieces, right? The portion of my budget that I'm going to put toward my food, the access that I have to farms or grocery stores, all those kinds of things go into how I choose my food. So all of these things are part of our stories. The psychology and the sociology and the economics and the genetics. I have a genetic thing in my gut that my grandma had that means I can't eat wheat and dairy. So that plays into it. So there's marketing. There's all these different material science. I bet that a lot of you in this room have majors or areas of study that play into somehow connected to our food, right? So here we are. I have, in part of my food story, my grandpa, who is my best friend, he had a thing that he did. Every morning at 10 o'clock and every afternoon at 2 o'clock was coffee time. And so he worked close to his house, and he would go into the kitchen at those break times, and he would have his coffee and cookies. My grandpa was a good baker and always had homemade cookies there at the table. So I like this. You know, when it comes 10 o'clock or 2 o'clock, sometimes I'm like, I think it's coffee and cookies time. So I brought it with me today. I have my it's not 10 or 2, but I can shift for you. So I've got my coffee here. And I've got my cookies. Today I have ginger cookies. And so what goes into these ginger cookies is that there is butter, which is obviously from the farm, right? Came from some cow, someplace made this butter. And then the sugar in my cookies is somewhere from Brazil, probably. It's sugar cane that's been harvested and milled and refined and then probably bleached. There's molasses in here. It's also from Brazil. It's actually a byproduct of the sugar processing. And then there's an egg, and so where were those chickens? These chickens actually happened to be on a farm where I work on Fridays. So that egg, I know exactly where that came from, but sometimes we don't. And then vanilla, and that was grown in Madagascar, off the coast of Africa. Vanilla beans that are painstakingly grown and conditioned, and then soaked in vodka, which is a distillation of cereal grains or potatoes that have been fermented. That's what makes the vanilla that's in my cookies. Then baking soda, man-made with a chemical reaction, or it can be mined in the state of Colorado. There's wheat that's ground from the berries of the wheat plant. Small amounts of bleaching agents are added, and then oxidizing agents, and then vitamins and minerals are put back into the flour because we took those out through the other processes. And then ginger that was grown in India or China or Indonesia, and then cinnamon, also a spice made from the bark of the cinnamon plant, and then salt, which was either mined or produced by the evaporation of seawater. So that's all in my cookie, right? And then the coffee, actually this particular coffee came from a small farm in Honduras. And my brother is friends with the farmer that grew this coffee, actually. And so his name's Emilio. So the coffee plants are now cultivated because coffee is such a popular commodity. Coffee plants are grown in 70 different countries around the equatorial regions of the Americas and Asia and India, Africa. And once ripe, those coffee berries are picked, processed, and dried, and then the coffee seeds are roasted to varying degrees. This is a medium roast, depending on the desired flavor. And then I brewed them with near boiling water and then came into my mug. There also happens to be maple syrup that was produced in Coudersport, Pennsylvania, and then an oat milk creamer. So all of those countries represented in my snack, right? All over the world, these ingredients have come from. How many processes did these ingredients go through? How many people were involved in what seems like something, it's coffee and cookies, something I grew up with all the time. And yet those ingredients came from all over the world. What a privilege it is to have these ingredients. So, what has nourishment looked like for you? How have you chosen what you have put into your body? So take a moment and talk to your partner, talk to your neighbor, your new neighbor maybe, about this. popular topic. I think people get excited about food. So we're going to break down one possibility, like what is food, right? We're going to break down one possibility of food choices. So these are garden potatoes that are over here. And backyard potatoes, if you put 1 calorie of energy in to planting those backyard potatoes, then you get 20 calories of energy out. Right? So it doesn't take much to plant a potato. You just cut out one of the little eyes off of a potato, and then you put it in the ground, and then it grows into more potatoes. Sometimes you may have had those potatoes sprout in the cupboard. That's what they're doing. They're just putting their life force of the thing we think of as food, which is actually all the energy that it takes to start sprouting the next round of potatoes. So growing potatoes is pretty darn simple. So that's that, potatoes. And then there's store-bought potatoes, 5 calories of energy in, and you get 1 calorie of energy out in store-bought potatoes. And then there's French fries, which I do have to admit I really love good French fries. 10 calories of energy in to get 1 calorie of energy out. And then there's potato chips, which is 20 calories of energy in to get 1 calorie. So what's happening here, right? We're losing energy. We started with 1 calorie in and 20 calories out, and then we ended with exactly the flip. Why? Any ideas out there? The energy going in depends on this, right? How are we doing it? This is how potatoes are planted out in, large-scale farms. So they need to have some equipment. And then there's equipment then to harvest the potatoes. And then there's whatever's going onto, this is obviously onto corn, but what's getting sprayed onto the plants, whether this is water or I'm guessing with the mask on it's some kind of pesticide or herbicide to help them grow better. And then there's, the watering. So the reason for that drop in energy that we're getting out of the products, the energy that we're putting in is more based around oil. So it's the growing techniques, it's the transportation to get the produce to the processing plant. Remember that when you did the transforming the ordinary and you put one item and then all the things that go into making that one item, you did that in lab. There are the processing costs, the packaging costs, and then the transportation to get the item to the store. So the need for fossil fuels in each of those goes in. So thinking about all those countries, the Madagascar vanilla and all of the ingredients. I don't know where the flour came from that went into these cookies. I don't know where the butter, I think the butter was more local, but I don't know what local really means exactly. So how is it that all of these levels of where our food, so it's an awareness, right? Having an awareness about where our food is coming from and the privilege it is that we get to have strawberries in the grocery store all year round. Strawberries only grow in Pennsylvania in the months of late May through maybe mid-June. It's about a month. But I can buy strawberries in the grocery store most any day. So the idea that all of this is choice, right? All of this, and then those are packaged in plastic, and and they're from California, so they're getting transported. So all of this oil that's going in the grocery store right now, so you can then do a cost breakdown. What's your return on investment? So homegrown potatoes, when we're talking about 1 calorie of energy in to get 20 calories of energy out, you're really investing pretty close to $0 a pound. And then as the processing goes up and the nutrition goes down, it's interesting that also the cost goes up. So it's like these inverse curves, right? So when you're choosing, some of you spoke very passionately on Monday about the dollar bill and wishing to have a dollar. How do you choose to use that dollar? Where do those resources, that time and energy that it takes to get that dollar, and then what are you choosing? How am I choosing to spend that dollar in order to get the return on investment that's really worthwhile for us? In the grocery store right now, let's go back to the 90s, the mid-90s, there were about 7,000 products in the grocery store. And today, there are somewhere between 40 and 50,000 things you can choose from at the grocery store. So figuring out the items to make your dollar go the farthest, to find the nutrition, and watching out because there are these food-like substances, the things that are advertised to be food. Potatoes are food, but potato products, potato chips, are more like food-like substances, right? All the extra processing that has gone into them is actually leading to less nutrition. And so Autumn also brought up the idea of the additives and preservatives, the chemicals that are going into our foods. So I wanted to mention the harmful ones to avoid when you're shopping. So avoiding trans fats, sodium nitrate, MSG, monosodium glutamate, artificial food coloring, high fructose corn syrup, aspartame, BHA, and BHT. Those are all things that are put into some foods as additives and preservatives for some reason that get our foods, where they need to go, but they're making them actually more harmful and less food-like. So a tip that really helped me is that when I'm shopping those 50,000 items at the grocery store, to shop the edges of the grocery store. So take a moment and picture the store where you usually go to choose your food or the location. And if you think about at least the grocery stores that I'm most familiar with, so you walk in and around one edge are going to be the fruits and vegetables, and across the back are is usually the meat department, and then down the other side are the dairy. That's where the eggs and milk and things are. So these things have been transported there, but they are the most food quality, high quality foods. So if you're looking to, get your bang for your buck, shopping the edges of the grocery store can help. I thought that was a really interesting thing when I learned about that. But not everybody has access to these large grocery stores.